There is a village named South Goldwater, where Halloween celebrated with great care and joy. The village got its name from the well, as that whatever the seasons it will never dry. Although the villagers are missing some things from every Halloween, but they don't seem bothered, as they say. Maybe that's the thing that doesn't belong to them also brings them bad omen. So they went missing, and that's how they spent Halloween holidays. As this Halloween week started, the villagers are excited and looking forward to it. At the beginning of the Halloween week, something strange happened in the village. This time, someone went missing from the village. She's the woman who resided in the village 4 years ago. She lived alone, who'd known to be brave, with lots of self-confidence. Her name was Cindy, and she used to be a personal tutor for kids in their village. The villagers were sacred and went to report them missing. As the night came by, there were some strange, evil, laughing noises started around the village. The villagers don't be able to sleep and decided to go to see their village's priest. When they were on their way, the laugh becomes stronger and stronger, and a sudden cyclone came by. But thankfully, they reached the church. They complained to the priest that something strange is happening around, and we are terrified. What do we do? The priest calmly said, maybe it's because of the seasonal changes. Soon it's going to be winter. That's why these are all happening. Why? Villagers said, but what about the evil laughs? Also, there is a woman who went missing since this morning. No one's seen her after last evening. The priest surprised. A woman went missing, as he doesn't know, because he always used to pray all day and lived next to the church. And surprisingly asked, what happened to her, why she's missing? Villagers said, we don't know too. We just reported her as missing this evening, where the kids said, teacher is not in her house, and we searched for her all around the village and didn't find. The priest with sad face, poor child, don't know what she's doing. The villagers asked, maybe it's because of that curse? The priest rushed and told the villagers, I will go visit my elder, who'd have known about that curse, and said he will return tonight with him. Ask him to visit our village. The villagers were terrified by murmuring about the curse being awakened or not. If Parker's ring found its body, his curse make him stronger, and he will wipe out our village. On the same night, a student named Tim from the village left the house with 3 others from his neighbor friends to see the haunted house. Tim wanted to prove them they were wrong, and there isn't such things as ghosts exist. So he and 3 other students went to the empty house nearby the graveyard. They went to that empty house because their parents warned them when they were kids. Don't go to that house as it was haunted, so no one bought it yet. So they were curious about what's in that house. As the moon came by, they went to that haunted house at 12 o'clock and visited all rooms with their trembling hands. After an hour went by, the trembles stopped, and Tim said that, I told you guys there isn't any ghost in this world. In another half hour has passed. They decided to go home. As if their parents know they would be grounded for a month. Then suddenly a voice whispered into their ears that, do you think you can come and go as your wish? With an evil laugh. They all scared to death, and one of his friends named Asher said, guys, did any of you heard the whispering with stuttering voice? Others, yeah, suddenly Tim said. Guys, I think we have to hurry. Someone is trying to frighten us. Asher said, no, it's the ghost. Our parents were right. This house is haunted. We are locked here with ghosts. We will never return while crying. Tim said, relax, Ash. There's no ghost. It's just a person we can return for. Now we have to hurry, relaxed Asher. When take their first step, lights went off, and they know from movies there isn't any lights in haunted houses, so they bring their torches with them. Asher was so scared, they all started to walk together. When they take their next step again, there is a whispering going already. Asher again, with an evil laugh. Bye. Asher cried out loud and said, "We were just curious, we didn't do anything wrong. Please, let us go, and we won't come again." Asher, guys run. After an hour went by, they didn't find a door where they first entered the house. Asher, exhausted, said, "We walked for an hour, but there isn't any door yet. But we entered the house by just 10 minutes of walking. Does anyone seem to think this isn't strange?" with low-pitched voice. And a whispering voice replied to Asher, "Yes, you're right, Asher. This means you are all trapped in my house forever this time. Evil wind blows." Wow. Asher with frightened voice and asked whispering voice, "Why are you replying to me?" Tim frustrated and said, "Ash, he knows you are frightened, so he want to fool you. Don't be silly and continue walking." Asher said, "I can't move, guys, help me," and crying. Ghost whispered, "Don't try, you won't be released until I free you." Other guys rushed to Asher and try to move him, but they can't. Asher stuck to the floor like a pillar. "Guys?" Tim angrily asked, "What do you want? Why you do this to us? If you are not scared, let us go, and we won't tell anything about you to our village peoples." Ghost shouted, "Do you think I'm doing this because I'm scared?" And then the house was shaken like earthquake. Windows started to tap itself. They all frightened, and Asher calmly asked, "What do you want from us, please? Let us know." Ghost replied, "Do you really do if I told you what I want?" Asher, "Yes, of course." Ghost calmly said, "I'm not greedy to ask for your lives, just a simple wish of mine." All of them with terrified voice, "We will do, tell us." "All right, at first go to the graveyard nearby this house and find a tombstone named Parker Cash." The student said, "We were so frightened, how we will go to that graveyard?" Ghost replied sarcastically, "All right then, die while you are young," angered inside. Students then said, No, we will go, please continue." Ghost continued, "If you find Parker's tombstone, dig his graveyard." Asher interrupted, "Who's Parker?" Ghost angrily replied, "Don't talk when I'm speaking, Ash. I thought you're a good boy who wants to return to your house with an evil laugh." "Yo," Asher repeated, Sorry for asking." Ghost gave a warning, "If anyone interrupt me this time, if I'm not completed my sentence, no one will be able to go home forever." And suddenly thunderbolts came into the haunted house. After seeing their terrified faces, the ghost then freely told them to dig Parker's graveyard and find his yellow stone diamond ring. After that find a man, he has to be handsome, at the same time have an evil side on him, and put this ring on his finger. After that, your job will be over, and he can't remove the ring forever, so don't try to put it on yourselves. Ghost whispered again every student ears that if you try to be smart, like destroy that ring, I will find you, and that would be your last day of your lives, and your parents too. Don't you want to know about your tutor with an evil laugh? She released me from my room because I showed her the truth about her boyfriend. She's so heartbroken, so I spared her life. After that, she left the village." With high-pitched laughs. Save that in your mind, especially you, Tim. I know you think I won't exist if you want to see me. Do what I said. As soon as the door opened, they all hurried and went to graveyard. Started to dig with a shovel that was placed nearby the tombstone. All of them started digging while Asher said, "Is this ring some kind of cursed or not?" with scared low pitch. After the digging, they found that yellow ring on the skeleton's hand. Asher with his stuttering voice, "How we're going to get this ring from that hand?" Tim bravely said, "I will take it." And then they safely reached their village. Tim took the ring with him and called everyone on phones, asked them, "So whom we are going to give this ring?" Others, no idea. Asher, suddenly, how about him? Others, who? Asher, Miss Cindy's boyfriend, a gold digger. Tim, good idea, Ash. I don't like him at all. He even borrowed money from the kids who Miss Cindy is tutoring and told the kids, don't tell anyone about this to her or anyone. And also he threatened the kids if they told her he will make them suffer by all means. Asher, how do you know all of this? Tim, I saw it, so I wanted to punish him. And the time has come. Asher, so how are we gonna trick him to wear this ring? Tim, I think I have an idea. Others, tell us quick. Tim elaborated. We will go to his house and meet him the next morning. Then we would act sadly about Miss Cindy's missing and gave him this ring, saying that this ring was prepared by Miss Cindy to propose to you. Asher, what if he didn't put the ring in his finger but went to sell that? Tim, he will sell if we say it's diamond. So what if we say it's just a yellow stoned ring? But we force him to put the ring on the spot. Asher applauded. Great idea, Tim. We will definitely go. And all hung up, gone to sleep. After a calm night, they all gathered in front of Davis, Cindy's boyfriend, house and met Davis. At first, they were surprised that Davis is not worried about his girlfriend went missing. So they did what they planned, except they said it's a diamond ring. As soon as he heard that he acted like a worried boyfriend in front of the students in a crying voice, my girlfriend wanted to present me a diamond ring that's so sweet of her. Davis said, I will keep this until she returns, don't worry, kids. Then he pushed them out of his house. Students don't know what to do, so they left Davis' house and told their parents about last night. Davis with a greedy voice. With this ring I can leave the village and buy myself a house in the city. So, he decided to run away. While on his decision, he called the students and asked them to meet at his house, as he's going to put the ring and show them that he's going to leave, as without his girlfriend, he can't live in this village like a cared boyfriend. But when he put the ring, something happened. That's not he wished for. The moment he put the ring, sky turned dark. Wind blown stronger than before. Thunderbolts hit him hard, and only his screaming sound heard. After that, rain and storm starts to pour. The villagers rushed to Davis' house before he puts the ring, when they heard the story from the students. But he already did. The villagers, terrified, and build up the courage to knock Davis' door and shouted, Davis, come out, we have to talk. But he's doing nothing but silence. After silence, the door opened and a voice said, Why, you're looking for him. Villagers, we need to talk, Davis. Don't put that ring, that's cursed. And at the door, a silhouette appeared, and walking towards the villagers, they frightened and take a step backward. And he appeared. That's too late to say to him. Parker laughs. Villagers gasps and terrified when they saw Parker. Finally, he appeared in front of us. Villagers shouted, ran for your lives. Parker came back to life. The villagers gathered at church and wait for the priest to come, and prayed with their and shaking hands to protect them. And the students who don't know about Parker asked their parents, who's this Parker? The villagers started Parker's story. Parker Cash grew in that haunted house. He used to live with his grandma. She's his only family. After his father passed away, he's a sweet, rich kid, would take other poor kids to his house, feed them, play with them, and give them what they want. Also, he used to be Tim's father's friend. But as he grew up, her grandma died of poisoning. Because of that, he's so agitated and holding grudges against the villagers. That we poisoned Grandma? After his grandma died, he never left his house. And when his friends go to see him, he acted like a crazy person who wanted to kill the whole village. No one visited him after that. But one day, a strange foul smell surrounded the village police, found Parker's dead body in the well. It happened a week ago. After that incident, no one goes near that house and villagers asked the priest to do some rituals to ease the spirit of Puff Parker. The priest sealed the Parker's room with some talisman, also the well. But once it's broken, we can't stop Parker, he's cursed. Meanwhile, thunderbolts starts to hit the church and whispering voices start to appear. Come out, you traitors. The villagers were so scared to go out, but with thunderbolts and cyclone, the church eventually broke halfway, one by one, ran out for their lives. When they started to run, suddenly thunder stopped and everything went normal, so they went to their homes. On that night, Tim's house started to shake. Even Tim got scared and stepped downstairs to his mother's and father's room. When he opened, he saw Parker and shouted, "Step away from my parents' room." Parker whispered Tim's ears, "Don't you know why I died?" While speaking to him, he took Tim's father and disappeared. Tim cried and asked his mother, "Where's father?" and ran away to search his father, as he shouted on the roads and asked every villager's house, but he didn't find his father. So he finally went to the haunted house and door opened for him. Lights turned on, and chair came to him to sit. Shoes, stepping voice came from stairs, and Parker approached in front of him. Tim gasped and wanted to run, but didn't, as he has to find his father. So he asked with trembling voice, "Where is my father?" "Parker, do you want to search this house?" laughed Parker. Tim searched all over the house but can't find his father, so he asked Parker politely, "Please, tell me where's my father?" Parker, with his evil voice, "If you sit with me and hear my story, I will tell you, can you, Tim?" Tim, "Yes, I will." Parker, "I don't have anyone like you searching for your father. No one from our village cared to know why I died. They only wanted my money." Parker angered. "Tim, interestingly, you didn't die of depression? That's what villagers said." "My name's..." Parker angered. "No, I was poisoning like my grandma and tortured by your father and my friends," with high-pitched voice. I begged them to spare my life, but no one listened. Now it's my turn to seek for my revenge," laughs Parker. "Hey!" Tim gasped and breathless when he heard. "Parker, your father always jealous that I'm rich." Tim agitated. "What, no way he's one of the rich people from this village? Why, he would be jealous of you?" Parker laughed. "Do you think he's born with silver spoon?" With his angered voice, "He took all my properties when I dead, even this haunted house. He wanted to sell this the moment my death was discovered, but I blocked it." Tim's stuttering voice, "No, he's not that kind of person," while crying, "Please let me have my father." Parker angered. "After I told this story, you still want your father? Don't you be ashamed of your father's doing?" Tim asked politely. "I'm ashamed, but he's my father after all. I know you died unfairly, but I promised to report my father for his doings, so please let me know where he's." Parker calmly, "He's in the graveyard where he buried me, but I buried him alive. He will be dying slowly. I poisoned him like he did to me." Tim rushed to graveyard, but his father is dying. Tim was so heartbroken. Angrily shouted Parker, "Do you satisfied now? You are a murderer." Parker laughed and answered, "No, I'm not satisfied. You have your father's blood in your body. I want that too, but in front of your father's eyes." Tim's father shouting, "No, Tim, Parker, with his agitated heart, went to visit his friend's house, who poisoned him. He visited them every night and tortured them to live in pain, and eventually killed them whom he believed to be his friends. But really not. He realized it after he died. When the day came, Parker disappeared. Darkness surrounded the well, turned the water to red and dried. Day after that, the priest and his elder priest did rituals around the well in the haunted house to save the village. The headlines read, 48-year-old man arrested for misbehaving with a female tenant. On further reading, the address read 1241 Drummond.01. That was just down the road of my apartment. It's a mansion on a really big fenced lawn. There's no front yard or backyard or garage. It's just a house with grass all around. It's painted in light green color and has a brown color roof. The interiors are pale. If you're wondering how I'd know the interiors, well, my roommates and I had gone for its viewing 4 months before. We had rejected that place because there seemed to be something really fishy about the owner. We gave in to our gut feelings, and after reading the headlines, we thanked our stars. From that day onwards, my life started to change. Since then, the house seemed to call out to me. It all started with imagery. Images of weird symbols drawn around it. Symbols I've seen before, but can't recollect. I can identify them by name, but don't understand the meaning. For instance, if I see a stick figure of a hybrid animal of dog and cat, I can tell you it's cat and dog. But I don't know what the hybrid figure symbolizes. The weird part yet is the fact that only I see them. Nobody else does. Neither my roommates, friends, nor family. As a matter of fact, my family doesn't reside here. They stay miles away, in another land. I have come to the States to pursue my bachelor's. I stay in a 3-storied apartment with 2 other roommates. We often go on walks in the evening, our only attempt to get in the breath of fresh air amidst the maze of school, study, and part-time jobs. I work as a barista in Starbucks. That's way down the road where I live, and I have to pass 1241 Drummond St. to get there. Being a person of color, I hate the job. I get so many racist remarks passed at me. I cry in the washroom but act fine later. October was in full swing, and the Halloween lights were up. Eerily enough, I had to work a late-night shift that day. As I was returning, I tried my best to take my eyes off the house. But that street seemed different. I no longer recognized the houses. I could swear there was no fence on this one house, and that other house was anything but painted in white. The trees seemed to overgrow, and the interiors of the house were no longer visible. I was certain that I too wasn't visible to them. At this moment, unfortunately or coincidentally, my eyes fell on the damned house. Just then, a symbol of a moon with rays of sun came into focus on the front door. The spotlight came from a distant tree with lights on it. I don't know how far the tree was. I stood a while trying to make sense of it. There was no one on the street. It was too desolate for 9 p.m. on a Wednesday evening. A chilly wind and the rustling of leaves brought me back to my senses, and I rushed home. As I got ready for bed that night, I seemed to get some strange nostalgia of my past, of present, of my family and friends. I've never felt homesick before. I wasn't in touch with most of them. I didn't have many friends other than Aaron Knight from 9th grade, but he had been absconding since graduation. No one knows why. So I didn't have anyone to talk to. Weirdly, the nostalgic episode lasted only 2 minutes. I felt indifferent after that. The next morning, as I was making myself some coffee, I saw an object shadow on the wall. It was the shape of the symbol I saw last night. I turned around, aghast. It seemed to fall from the sky with some leaves. I pinch myself to reassure myself that I'm not dreaming. But I see it falling over again, with the last remnants of autumn leaves. I rush to the window and peek down, though I could swear multiple symbols fell down. There, lying down amidst the grass, is one shiny symbol. I think twice if I should go down or not. The leaves rustled around that, giving me complete visibility. Despite the fear and uncertainty, I I rushed down to find the symbol. As I lifted it in my hand, I felt the weight of it. For its size, it's definitely a lot heavier. It was very weird. Now more than ever I was certain, to fill in the piece, I had to go to 1241 Drummond St. 1. Girls, we need to go to 1241. Drummond St. has been meaning to tell me something. My head hurts from all the signs. I try my best to convince my roommates, Ruth Higgins and Leah Koch. May 3, please. It was a crime site. Stay out of it, says Leah. What signs? Says Ruth. Here, see this. Wait, where did it go? Girls, I just had it with me. I scour my room and my bag. Still, I don't find it. Maybe it wasn't visible to others. I found a pendant. It fell from above. From the sky, maybe? A pendant having the shape of the moon with rays of sun. I saw the same symbol etched on the door of that house. It just, please, accompany me on that house. Moon with sun rays? From the sky? May 3, are you out of your mind? How is that even possible? It would make an amusing Halloween costume for sure. But we don't buy this, they ridiculed. From their talks, it was clear I had to go alone. And I would on the coming Saturday at 10:00 a.m. Wonihua. I show up as scheduled and knock on the door. No response. I could feel something move in the curtains though. I take a deep breath and push the doorknob. It's open. I step inside and I'm doing so my heart thumps harder. My breath gets heavier with each passing minute. There's absolutely nothing in the house. The indoors are primarily dark with a dim light entering through a small gap between the curtains. I cannot find switches anywhere to turn on lights. I expected cobwebs at the least, if not furniture covered in white cloth. But there's not even that. I wonder how terrorizing it must have been here. Suddenly the door closes shut, and I can hear some screeching. The heaters in the room spring to life and make sounds. This noise gets unbearable and louder. I close my ears, eyes, and yell, "Stop! Who's there? What do you want from me?" It gets quiet. I can hear my heartbeat. I take my hands off my ears and open my eyes. To my surprise, there's a full-length mirror in front of me. It wasn't there earlier. The curtains out of nowhere cover the windows, blocking all light. I hear knocking on the windows, chattering of teeth, and the night sky comes into light in the mirror. Moon amidst million stars. It feels trippy. A voice starts narrating. The sun is fire. The moon is illuminated from his fire. The sun controls the spirit. The moon is the soul. The sun is masculine. The moon is feminine. The moon is feminine. The moon is feminine. The moon nurtures people. I speak as the moon. I speak as the moon. But who are you? My name doesn't matter. I'm the girl who stayed in this place. The one that reported the landlord. Rather, land devil. The one who got pity glances after that. As a victim. Helpless victim. I am so sorry. But why does this involve me? Because before me, it was you who came to view this house. You sensed something fishy in him, but didn't listen to your gut feeling. You could have raised your voice and used social media. You are fickle-minded, a sadist. What? How can you say that? You play victim when you face racial discrimination in the States. You took shelter behind your white best friend Aaron in high school, but back in India, you were a bully too. Not once have you repented your actions over people you've hurt. Yet, you have the audacity to play the victim. Mend your ways. Mend them before others like me come back and make you pay for your deeds. How do you know all this about me? I managed to stammer. That's where the sunbeams come into play. The sun may be the spirit, but the beams channelize the negative feelings away from us. They request us to get rid of them before engulfing us in the dark hole. And one of my hatred is channeled towards you. The other is rotting in jail. But what do I do with you? If I hurt you or kill you, my sins would come back. Her words hit me. They impacted me. So I asked her, you could have stayed alive to tell me all these. Why did you commit suicide and spook me with all this imagery? Well, depression is different. A redemption happens after life, and I don't want you to wait until then. I don't want anyone to reside in this house. I will hence haunt it forever. I will guide people like you. A bright light blinds me, forcing me to close my eyes. When I open, it's the same empty room. A ray of light peeks through. I came outside, and it's nearly 11 a.m. I have newfound knowledge and sit down and cry. I miss Aaron Knight terribly. He was my best friend when I came to the States in 9th grade. He was the only one who didn't discriminate against me on the color of my skin. He was fighting a battle himself with his family. I wonder if that got too serious. He fled the city without informing anyone. Not even me. Maybe I meant nothing to him. My life in India was entirely different from what I faced here. I came from a well-off family, and the kids swarmed to be friends with me. I love to hear people's stories, and how I mostly had a better life than them. But Anwesha never shared hers. I don't know why she was so silent. Maybe I never respected that and wanted to dig deep. Maybe this is what they called bullying? Whatever it is, Anwesha was definitely easier to contact than Aaron Knight, so I do some internet stalking. Seems like she's becoming an entrepreneur. So I text her on Facebook. Hi. Congratulations on starting your company. You never spoke in school, and now you have to divulge details to investors. This is not a snide remark. Rather, it's me thinking about the turntables. I now know how it feels to have your privacy invaded. The realization has been long. I'm so sorry. I'm not certain if she will reply. I don't know if she'll remember me or she'll care. As I walk home, I reflect on many things. I decide to uplift myself and pride myself on skin color, instead of letting others' comments affect me. Do you girls want to get some coffee this evening? I chirp excitedly after I get home. At this point, I'd really appreciate some social support. You had gone to that house. We don't want to talk to you. Odd, they say. I hide my apprehensions and reply, what? No, I went to meet a teacher and we had a great conversation. They laughed and said, we were just joking. Coffee sounds great, but let's get back by 5 p.m. We had a great time. To my absolute surprise, they had hosted a Halloween party and invited some of our friends. As I reminisce about the day, my phone beeps. It's from Anwesha. Hey, it's totally fine. The fact that you finally realized this makes me happier. Cheers. I'm content that we're at peace. Deep inside, I pray Aaron is hale and healthy. Author's note: if you're curious about Aaron Knight, read my story, Unfathomable Regret. If you're curious about Anwesha's entrepreneurial journey, read Future on Hand. I'm trying to create character spin-offs. It was time. Ember knew that it was time. It was the night of the 40th anniversary when she had dug up the time capsule left for her. It was her turn to repeat the tradition. It was time for her to gather up the things that she wanted her great-granddaughter to remember her by. Time to put together the little pieces of history that would help the girl learn who her family had been, where they had come from, how they had loved her before she had even been born. The first thing into the capsule was a little doll that her mother had gotten her from a craft fair one day. handmade in what was nowadays considered a classic style. It was one of the only truly happy memories she had of her mother, a treasured time of perfect happiness that she shared in the letter she included next to it. She whispered a wish into the cool, crisp twilight air that the person who she was sending this to would know how much Ember loved her to give this memory away. Letters were the next thing to go in, ones from other family members. All of them had chosen to write something inspirational or kind eventually, even if some had taken longer than others to decide to do so. Ember had made sure that everyone was included here. The person this capsule was for deserved nothing less. Little knickknacks came after that, from Ember and her family both. Things that they had imagined a child might like. Ember paused in her packing to study a particularly silly soapstone figure of a frog making a shocked face. She hoped that it made the person she was sending this to smile. "I'm sure she'll love it. Everything looks so great, Ember." "Ember's best friend," exclaimed from her side suddenly, ending the quiet that had previously cloaked the backyard. Having known Alice since her childhood, Ember was far too used to her friend doing this sort of thing to jump, but it was a near thing. She felt comforted by her friend's presence, and yet, at the same time, torn apart. Even though she'd been expecting her. Having her here was something that Ember had been dreading. She looked up instead of jumping to see Alice standing beside her, next to the box that contained the items Ember was packing away into the capsule. "Do you remember when we got it?" Ember asked softly. "Yeah," Alice confirmed with a laugh. "At that little novelty shop we stopped by years ago. You tried to give it to Claire as a reward for winning her spelling bee, and she looked at you like you were insane and asked for an Apple gift card instead. She's always been a character." Ember agreed with laughter of her own, before quieting herself as she asked, "Do you really think my great-granddaughter will like it?" "I know so. It will be the thing that she treasures most besides the doll. They'll both mean quite a bit to her. I'm sure of it," Alice said cheerfully, smiling a smile at Ember that bit with its familiarity and the knowledge that soon it would be lost. "I hope you're right." Ember put the figure into the capsule and then paused at the lone item that was left. She looked down at the little folded bit of paper she'd been hesitating to touch, running one finger gently over the red origami swan waiting patiently in the box. Made from some sort of shiny red paper, with no visible wear or tear to it at all, it looked as though it could have been folded yesterday. But it hadn't been. It really, truly hadn't been. "I think that you're going to be what she treasures most. You were for me," Ember murmured in a subdued voice, her throat closing up with the emotion that swamped her and threatened to do away with her composure entirely. As her strength deserted her and she slumped forward, Alice sighed deeply and stepped close, gathering Ember up into her arms. Feeling small, feeling like she was just a child again, Ember turned to bury her face in her best friend's chest. She could hear her friend's heart beating, hear it pulsing blood through her friend's veins. But it wasn't real. It was just an illusion. It had always been an illusion. Alice's heart had stopped beating centuries ago. "Oh, Ember, sweetheart, you knew it was always going to be this way. You knew it from the day that you turned 10 and dug up your great-grandmother's time capsule. The day that we met for the very first time and I told you." Ember cut Alice off. 40 years awake, 40 years asleep. "Yes," I remembered. I just didn't realize that 40 years could pass by so fast." Alice had been Ember's rock ever since her childhood. When Ember's parents fought, Alice was there to comfort her. When Ember had a difficult choice to make, Alice was there to advise her. She had never let Ember down, never steered her wrong. Not once. And now Ember was going to lose her. Ember was going to lose her no matter what either of them did. Ember cried then. She cried long and hard and sobbing. It was an ugly cry, one that felt like it was being wrenched out of her chest, even as she tried desperately to stop herself. These were going to be her last few moments with Alice. She didn't want to spend them like this. But when she managed to look up at her best friend through her tears, she saw that Alice was crying too. It wasn't only Ember, then, that found this parting to be impossible to bear. I wish you could have gone to my daughter, even if I wouldn't have been able to see you any longer. I wish I could know that you're going to be safe. She confessed desperately through her sobs. That's not the way it works, Alice said softly, continuing to rock Ember gently in her arms. You know that I would if I could. But I have to go back to sleep now, darling. I know, Ember gasped hopelessly. I know. Swallowing harshly, shaking as she pulled away and desperately wishing she didn't have to, Ember allowed herself to take one last, long look at her ancestor's face. The ancestor that had cast the magic that allowed her to guard over her family for the rest of time, even if only for certain generations. The ancestor that had done such a good job of looking after Ember for the past 4 decades. The ancestor that could no longer do so now. She looked, and she carved into her memory the face of the woman who had been her best friend, the woman who had been more mother to her than her biological one had ever been. She took in every last detail, every imperfection, every beauty mark. And when she was done, she heaved in one last gasping breath before gently gathering up the origami swan and placing it into the time capsule as if it were made of spun sugar instead of an indestructible paper. An indestructible paper that Alice had told her time and again to never try to destroy. Goodbye, Ember. Alice's voice sounded from behind her. Goodbye, Alice. Ember replied in a voice that cracked with emotion. She twisted shut the time capsule and watched as Alice disappeared from where she had been standing. When she was gone, when Ember could be sure that Alice was trapped in her 40 years of sleep, Ember left the open hole she'd been standing in front of to walk around the house to her front yard. She stepped onto the driveway there and walked to where her car was parked. She had a passing thought to be grateful that her husband was away on business and her kids long since grown out of the house. There would be questions about her leaving at this time of night, if any of them were here. Once she reached her car, Ember got in, starting it, and driving to a building that was dark and locked up tight. That didn't matter, though. Another one of Ember's friends worked there, and he'd given her the keys to the building and instructions when Ember had begged. Unlocking and pulling open the mortuary door, Ember walked the path to where the cremation chambers stood. It was chilly in here, but the cold didn't seem to touch her, resolved as she was to see this through. She paused for only a moment to peer into dark and unlit depths of the chambers before opening one of the heavily reinforced steel doors. She reached into her purse, pulling out the time capsule and placing it into the open chamber before her. It was eerie to be here, still and quiet as it was, even eerier considering what Ember intended to do. She had a mission, though, she reminded herself sternly, and she wouldn't give it up because this place was giving her the heebies. This would work. People may have tried to destroy the origami swan before her, but technology then hadn't been what it is now. Now, technology was good enough to counter magic. Now, Ember would be able to set Alice free. On a piece of paper, she'd written the instructions her friend had given on how to start the process of cremation, and her heart leapt with joy as the chamber she had put the time capsule into fired up obediently. Racing over to peer closely into the machine through its window, Ember watched with a heart galloping in anticipation as she squinted past the bright flames to where the time capsule sat. Through the bright flames, she was just barely able to make it out as the capsule and its contents melted and turned to ash. But something was wrong, and it wasn't hard to spot what. For some reason, and Ember suspected she knew why, it was far easier to watch the red origami swan than it was to see the rest of the capsule. To watch as the swan didn't burn. Ember began to scream and writhe and burn instead of that folded piece of enchanted paper. And she wished that she had taken Alice's advice to never try to destroy the swan. As her body turned to dust, she felt the parts of her that made up her soul be drawn to somewhere else. Somewhere surrounded by burning flames. Somewhere red and small and made of paper. She didn't know how, but she could still see as she was funneled into the swan. See the flames all around her as she was sucked in. See through the window of the chamber to the room beyond. There, standing where Ember once stood Alice. I'm Leah, and I live with my mom and dad in a small neighborhood. I never get to play with any of the kids or even just go outside, but on some occasions he would invite some kids over. Mostly girls that are my age. After that, they would never visit again, so he would just invite a new one over. Back then, my life was fun, when Mom was still around. One night, Mom and Dad had a fight. Dad told me to go to my room, so I did. I could hear them yelling. After a few minutes, the noise stopped. My dad picked and told me to go to sleep. I was only 5 back then, so I didn't know what was going on. I woke up the next day and my eyes were hurting, like they were being stabbed. I screamed in pain. I couldn't see anything. I heard my dad opening the door to my room. "What's wrong, Leah?" he said with a worried voice. My eyes hurt. I cried in pain. "Let me take a look," he said while holding my face. "Stay calm, and I'll get some medicine." I waited for him in my bed for what felt like an hour. After some time, I could hear his footsteps again. "This is going to hurt for a bit, okay?" he told me. After that, the pain had gone away, but every time it would come back, I would just call my dad and he would do the same thing again. This went on for a couple of weeks until I couldn't feel anything anymore. Now I'm 16. Dad told me that Mom left us the day they were fighting. I memorized everything and every place in our house, so I just walk around when I feel bored. Crash! I turned my head in the direction the sound came from and heard a scream of a little girl. "Who's there?" I asked while slowly walking towards the kitchen. "Do you live here?" a shaking voice asked. "Yes." "Who are you?" I waited for her answer, but she didn't reply. "Who are you talking to, Leah?" I jumped from my dad's voice. "I was talking to a girl. Didn't you see her?" I stayed quiet to hear if she's still here. "It's just you and me here, dear. I didn't invite any guests today," he said, while walking me to my room. Who did I hear then? "Wake up, please," a voice whispered in my ear. "Who's there?" "You need to help me, please," she said with a shaky voice. "Who are you?" I asked while trying to stand up. "I'm Elise. I'm begging you, help me, please." I could hear her crying. "What are you doing here? Leave me alone." I quietly screamed. I walked out my room and opened the front door and waited for her to leave. I closed the door when I couldn't hear her and walked back to my room. Few days passed, and Elise was nowhere to be heard. It was quiet until the day came Mary Jane. "Do you know that guy?" she asked. "What guy?" I asked, confused. "The guy that lives here. You mean my dad?" I listened for her reply, but couldn't hear anything. The next day, she talked to me again. "Why are you still living with him?" she asked, but I just told her, "I want to," and then it was silent again. This went on for days. New names of girls. I didn't know if it was the same person just playing tricks on me, or it was actually different people. All were asking for help each time my dad was not home. I ignored them and just told myself that maybe my dad invited them and they just wanted to go home early. They never finished talking because they keep leaving before I could ask them what they needed help. After that, Mary Jane, or the others who never told me their names, never came to talk to me. Leah, help me. I heard my dad yelling in pain. Dad, what's wrong? I asked. Help me, please. I ran outside and yelled for help, hoping someone would hear me. What's wrong, child? What happened to you? A woman's voice said in shock. My dad, he needs help. He's inside. Please help him. I said. I could feel the tears forming. The lady told me to stay outside while she calls an ambulance and go check my father. After a few minutes, I could hear sirens. Then a man asked me, what happened to you, dear? I was confused and didn't answer. The lady held my hand and told me that my father had a heart attack. They took me to the hospital, and when I woke up, the doctor told me to open my eyes. I didn't know what he meant by that, so he held my face and told me that he'll open them for me. Tears began forming. I could see again. A lady was standing beside me and told me everything. My dad stitched my eyes the night my mom and him were fighting. I was terrified. I just cried and did nothing. Months passed. I lived with the woman who helped me. I needed to go to the hospital for them to keep checking my eyes. As I was there, I saw a newspaper with my dad's picture. Man wanted after taking 15 children. Claire M., Paris C., Mary Jane K., Elise D., Christine L., and Laya G., etc. Some were found dead, except 2. Leah, her so-called daughter, and Claire, while one is still missing to this day. I was in shock. 2 of those names I recognized. My dad was kidnapping kids and killing them. Then I remembered every girl who asked for my help but never did. What really happened with Mom that night? But the big thing that got me terrified the most was, did I talk to them when they were still alive? Or was I talking to children my dad killed? Duh. Hi, dear, a cold voice whispered. Dad? His bright electric blue eyes seemed flickered to a crimson red. His teeth grinding together, lips parted, a low growl resonating from his deep within his throat. His hands clenched together, itching to throw a punch. His feet are shoulder-width apart, ready to launch an assault. His golden hair glowing more than usual, brightening up the darkness around him. But instead, his brother gets him to sit back in the booth, only to watch the show. She stands across the bar room, leaning against the tall bar. Her tall stature and the glitter around her eyes shine from the dancing lights around her. Her deep violet dress shows off her chest. Her purple sapphire eyes scanning around the room, looking for something or someone. Her very essence drawing in the crowd. Men each taking a chance, trying to buy her a drink, trying to ask her to dance. Without having to say a word, just the look of disapproval is enough to make them scram. Soon her eyes pass over the strong-willed man, sitting at a large booth in the corner, his comical-ridden twin trying to keep his attention. But those electric blues have had their eye on something else. Their eyes meet, and a smirk glides across her thin lips. Her laughter is heard through the malicious stare she holds. He won't give her the satisfaction of seeing his jealousy. The next man to walk towards her, she pulls in close, her arms wrapping around his neck, whispering sweet nothings to him. Oh, what he doesn't know won't hurt him right. His hands grip her waist, letting her have her way with him. She nibbles his neck, getting him hot, knowing it herself is all a show. Her night is about more than getting her drink on. Her night continues, dancing and drinking. Her eyes glancing over at the golden-haired man every now and then. Locking eyes, seeing his anger in her doings. His twin unable to keep him occupied anymore. He tries to make him head out the door, but the glass in his hand shatters. He won't move from the booth, not without her, though they both know it would take a miracle for her waltz out with her in his arms. Her jewels like eyes haze over from the alcohol integrated in her systems. She lets a man pull her onto the floor, tangling together in a dance of drunkenness. His hands keep their hold on her waist as she grinds against him, sliding down to her hips. Not caring at all about who's watching, she lets him continue, knowing it's only fueling the fire, and her arms wrap around his neck. All eyes are attracted to her. She is the star of the show. She is a rose in a sea of daisies. She, a delicate flower, attracting all those around her. But watch out for her thorns, for they won't just prick you, they will tear you to shreds. He's had enough by this point. She is being tossed from man to man. Not that she minds, but he's done watching his girl get it on with someone else. She may think she never wants to see him again, but the way she is acting tells a whole different story. Her short glances his way, the way she keeps her back to him, showing him her curves. The look she gives him when she has her arms around another man. A boy has his lips pressed against her neck, biting the sensitive skin. The giggles she is making. He used to make her do that. He knew all her sensitive areas. He knew every part of her. He knew things no man will ever know, especially those standing in this club right now. She doesn't see the boy that was just holding her get his face bashed in and become replaced. He keeps her facing away from him, sliding his fingers across her waist. His light touch gives it away. She tenses. He won't let her turn around, keeping a tight hold, making her sway with him. He presses just the right areas that make her moan. What a beautiful sound it is. It is music to his ears. It brings back so many memories, ones she has missed so much but would never admit. She can't stop leaning her head back against his shoulders, him nipping at her ears, kissing her neck. Nothing stopping him from claiming her. She is his sun. The glitter dancing off the light, the glow that reflects off the shine in her perspiration. The dim light does nothing to take away the shine from her eyes. Pulling them closer together, she grabs hold of his hands and laces her fingers with his, hugging him closer, if that's possible. He whispers old memories of sun flares and shooting stars to her, his breath tickling the back of her neck, making her swoon all over, bringing her back to times of rebuilding and new growth. A time when the sun brought the future of a new day. A hazy fog seems to float through the air. Their eyes closed, not noticing. They are lost in each other. It isn't until the screaming starts, the rushing of people pushing past, the cries from around them, then the heat of the flames, and the building burned and burned to the ground. Fire roared over the rooftop, raining ash from the sky. Shades of orange colored the heavens, flickering against the starry blue night. Agony-fueled screams echoed over the flames. They are trying to get out of the crumbling building, but most have lost the air they need to breathe, the oxygen being sucked from their lungs, only bringing the inferno higher and higher. People run around, looking for partners, brothers and sisters, lovers. Water rains from the firefighters' hoses, trying to tame the flame. The building is completely engulfed, no one going in and no one coming out. Ashes land on the few to make it out, getting seen by medical professionals. Burns that will stay to make them forever remember this horrid night. His eyes reflect the golden inferno, not affecting his stance as he glares down the blaze. His fist clenched together tight as he looks around, frantic that he can't see her. His electric stare searches through the crowd, unable to find his vibrant violet beauty, that only a few hours ago the color blended in with his, holding him close as they dance around the floor of the nightclub. They were molded to each other, fitting perfectly like a puzzle. not caring about the people gazing in longing, wanting what they have, the bond the two in the middle share. He moves past others, shoving past the ones trying to stop him. He needs to get closer. He needs to see for himself. Where is she? They were separated as the fire began to grow, as others began to run and scream. He tried hard to hold on to her. He had marks in his palms from her digging her nails in, her words still echoing in his head, her beautiful face showing fear of not getting out. When he felt her slip from his hold, his heart cracked, like it already knew what was about to happen. The heat doesn't bother him at first. He maneuvers around the rubble, looking for those purple sapphire eyes, praying he gets to her in time. Ashes fall around him as he continues. His hand goes to his face, trying to protect himself from the burning flames. He tries to go to the place he lost her, but it looks nothing like the club anymore. The fire rages on, not giving him any sympathy. Then he hears her. He hears her calling out. While some have lost their will to speak, she still shrieks his name. He rushes forward, screaming her name. A hand reaches and grabs his arm. He stops and tries to keep standing, while this person tries to get up. The person is unrecognizable. His hand burning into his arm. He tries not to cry out. The person's grip doesn't last long. They don't seem to have the energy to hold on. Once it loosens, he rips his arm out of their grasps. He calls out to her again, hoping to still hear her. She cries back and he rushes in, hoping to find her in time. Time. But something neither of them don't have. Her voice gets louder as he continues. He knows he's close. With the fire roaring in his ears, it's hard to hear her, but he won't back down. Then, under some rubble, he sees her violet dress. It's frayed and burning, but the color stands out. He tells her not to move, that he will get her out. She whimpers in distress. He knows he's going to get burned, but saving her is more important. He squats down and grips under the mask, keeping them apart. With one heave, he pulls with all his strength and moves it out of the way. She's covered in burns and her leg looks broken, but he promises she will be safe now. He picks her up bridal style and hurries to get them out of the building. It is on the edge of collapsing, and if they don't get out now, they may never will. He attempts to go the way he came in, but it's blocked. So, he has to maneuver around and find a new way to the exit. She clings to him tightly, telling him to hurry. The exit comes into view, and he races towards it. Just as they pass through, the whole building goes down in flames. Trigger warnings. Suicide. Murder. I saw the man again yesterday. He was big and tall, taller than Father. He stood at the end of the hall and made an angry face. Sometimes he yelled. He didn't see me though. I was hiding, and anyway, he was looking at Jack. Jack looked a little bit scared and also angry. But when Father and Mother came, he was quickly not angry. Father made a strange man come in, and the strange man said some things and went away. Father and Mother were not angry anymore. Today, Jack was sleeping and I saw the man go into his room. I heard Jack yell. Me and Father and Mother came in, and the man was gone, but Jack turned the light on and didn't sleep. Oh no. I don't know what to do. The exorcist came and went, but the ghosts just changed. We can't sell the house. There's nowhere else to go. She pressed her fingers against her temples and looked at her husband. Her husband looked tired. We can have the kids stay at Pastor Blair's for a night. Absolutely not. We barely know the man. Susan, it's the only solution left. No. We went to Pastor's house today. His wife was nice and made us cake. Then, Father and Mother told me and Jack we were going to sleep here tonight. I didn't want to go, but Pastor said I could have more cake for breakfast. I like cake. Me and Jack slept in the same room. The bed was very comfy. I fell asleep very fast. I woke up because there was a lady screaming. She was like the man because she only looked at Jack. Jack just looked scared this time, even when Pastor came in and the lady screamed louder. We went home after that. I didn't get any more cake. It's following the kids, isn't it? Maybe they've just been in the town for a while. And we're new. And they don't like that. Pastor knew the woman, said she was from a town over, and right as rain a week ago. Maybe the ghosts flock here, I don't know. We have to do something, Michael. An old lady came to our house today. She hung weird-smelling stuff all around the house. Mother and Father told us not to touch it. They said it would make the people go away. They've gone away for now. We can't leave the herbs up. They're stinking up the house. It's just a few more days. Father took the weird stuff down. Then when I was sleeping, I woke up again because there was a man standing at Jack's door. Father and Mother are very angry now. I was having a nice dream. Me and Jack were at the beach. I've never been to the beach, so I don't know what it looks like, but it looked like what I think the beach would look like. We have to move. There's no other option. Fine. We can stay with Marge for a bit and figure out what to do. Father and Mother and Jack packed everything up and we are leaving. I think it's because of the people. They keep coming into Jack's room, and Jack is very scared and angry, I think. We got into the wagon, and we went away. Father says it will be a long time before we get somewhere. As the family sleeps, the ghosts hover near. We got to a big town. We went to a house, and there was a lady I didn't know. Mother says she is Father's sister. I didn't know Father had a sister. When we slept, a little girl came. She didn't scream like the others, and she didn't wake Jack up. I only saw her because I went to take a pee. I asked her what her name was, and she said Lucy. I asked her where she lived, and she said she didn't have a home. We played together until I got too tired, and then she went away. I slept for a long time, so when I woke up, the sun was high in the sky. I hope I can see Lucy again. She seems very nice, even though she's a bit sad. Anything yet, Jack? Nothing, Mother. I talked to Lucy, and she said something very strange. She said she was dead. I asked her how she could be dead if she was sitting here talking to me. She said that she was trapped and could not move on until the person who made her dead was gone. I said that I was sure they would be gone soon. The neighbors have been complaining. Of what? Apparently our little girl and her playmate have been staying up talking too late. But she doesn't have a playmate. Exactly. Lucy said that she couldn't stay. She said she was passing the job on to someone else. They're coming again. It's a different one this time. That doesn't matter. We'll never escape them. Suddenly, both parents noticed their daughter standing in the doorway. What is it, sweetie? She said she'd leave if the person who made her dead was gone. There's a moment of shocked silence. What? Sweetie? Lucy said she'd leave if the person who made her dead was gone. Down the hall, the brother slips away. He knows what he has to do. Jack didn't come home. Father and Mother are very worried. They got the big people with funny hats to go look for him. I saw Mother crying. No one else came today. It felt a little bit lonely. I miss Lucy. Officer, he has to be out there somewhere. I'm sorry, ma'am, but he's nowhere to be found. We've put up flyers and had search teams. It seems he does not want to be found. He has to. He has to come home. Later that night, the parents stare out the window. The father says, "They've stopped coming, though." From the kitchen, The voice of the father's sister says, "Good riddance." Jack has been gone for a long time. The men with the funny hats came to our door again. They look serious. Father and mother rush out with them. Auntie Marge is taking care of me. Certificate of death. This is to certify that Jack Green died at London Bridge on the 31st of October. Cause of death, suicide. Sex, male. Age, 17 years. Fire-colored leaves scatter on the uneven wet road, drifting through the air as a light blue, 1980 Chevy Silverado weaves in and out of turns. An Aussie shepherd sticks his head out the passenger window and enjoys the breeze. "Coda, get your head out of the window," the driver says, blowing cigarette smoke. "It's going to rain." He reaches towards the dog to pull him into the truck, but the uneven terrain causes the vehicle to lurch back and forth, causing Coda to fall off his seat. "You gotta use your seat belt," the man says, smiling as he reaches across the seat to buckle him in. "You're an old man now, you know that?" The man looks into the rearview mirror, and the smile fades. Looking at his own reflection, he sees that his hair has lost its color over the years, and his tan skin is cracking. His eyes have become a sad shade of green. His closely trimmed beard, once dark and bold, has become gray and withered. The man sighs. "How about we listen to some music, old man?" he says to Coda. He opens the glove compartment, revealing a stack of old rock and roll tapes. As he reaches, he can't help but let out a string of loud and painful coughs, causing something to fall out. The object lands next to a cigarette butt in the truck's ashtray. The man pushes his shirt to the side to see two stitched SAAs marked on his chest, just above his heart. He looks at them in concern for a moment, but pushes the thoughts away. He's just old. He has a few other tattoos he can't remember getting. No big deal. The man reaches into the ashtray to pick up what fell and brushes it off to see a picture of a young girl no more than 6 years old. He smiles and sets the picture aside. He slides the tape into its compartment on the dashboard. "Sweet Child O' Mine" by Guns N' Roses plays. Coda howls along. As time passes, the clouds get thicker, and a heavy rain begins to fall. The truck reaches a gate, and the man rolls down his window to greet the Acadia National Park ranger. "Good evening, Jacob," the ranger says. "Hey, Rosie, heading out?" "Yep. 3-hour drive home to Moosehead. You know that. I never understood why you'd come here rather than stay at Moosehead Lake." "Oh, it's not me. Coda loves it here." Jacob gives Coda an affectionate pet on the head. "And I've got all the time in the world. Drive home safely. You know how main roads get on rainy days." Jacob nods as he presses on the gas pedal and slowly pulls away, leaving a deep mud track on the road. After a while, his mind drifts back to the photo of the young girl. It shows her smiling as she poses on a swing set. Behind her, a much younger Jacob pushes her on the swing, cigarette in mouth. November 17th, 1989. Jacob remembers Dr. It's been 10 years. Emma always loved the swings. To her, higher was never too high. Shortly after the picture was taken, she jumped off at the peak of the swing's height, and when she hit the ground, she twisted her ankle. She cried for half an hour, Jacob remembers. He remembers how after a minute, she hopped back on and demanded that he push her even higher. Jacob's brow furrows. What happened after that? As he drives on, Jacob looks at the time on the dashboard of the truck. 12:47 a.m. The trees add a layer of darkness the moonlight can't penetrate, and the rain dances as it hits the windshield. He looks over at Coda, who has fallen asleep with his face squished against the window. Jacob is beginning to fall asleep himself as well. Long-distance drives were never easy for him. He feels his eyelids grow heavier, nodding at every stretch. He allows his eyes to shut long enough for the hood of the truck to clip the road barrier. "Oh shit!" Jacob screams. The truck barrels through the barrier and skids off the wet road. He careens down a hill and into the trees. Mud splatters over the windshield, and the head of the vehicle grazes a tree, slowing its descent just long enough for Jacob to regain control. He slams his foot on the brake. As the truck comes to a stop, he takes a sigh of relief and turns to Coda. "Aw, you pissed yourself," he says. Coda's big eyes look around wildly with his tail tucked between his legs. "Fair enough." Jacob grabs a flashlight and steps out of the truck. At this time of night, no one will be driving by. He shines the light onto the hood to see black smoke seeping through the openings. Great. He throws the driver door open and tries to start the truck, but it groans and sputters out. "Come on, big girl, you can do it," he says. He turns his keys in the ignition again, but doesn't get a response. He punches the steering wheel multiple times. Shit. Coda starts growling. "Sorry," Jacob responds, but the dog turns to barking. "Hey, what's wrong, old man?" The dog dashes out the door into the forest, brushing past Jacob and knocking the flashlight out of his hand. "Coda!" Jacob runs after him into the darkness. He blindly rushes through the trees and branches, stumbling over roots. The jagged edges of branches dig into him as he passes, tearing his clothes and shredding his skin. "Coda, come back!" Though bleeding and exhausted, Jacob pushes on. Ahead, the trees are more visible. He moves towards them, leading to a clearing where the moon is bright enough to be seen clearly through the clouds. His eyes follow the leaves falling around him, leading his gaze to a small wooden house in the middle of the field. The moonlight reflects against a pond in the distance, emitting a pattern against the wood. The water ripples as the rain falls, distorting the moon's image. A single swing set stands alone near the rear of the house. The grass in the area seems untouched, and pink and purple-colored flowers are scattered throughout the clearing. An odd mix of dread, déjà vu consumes Jacob as he searches frantically for Coda, knowing that he heard his growl from here. It is pouring rain, and Jacob is completely drenched. The blood oozing out of his wounds speckles his clothing. He wipes the bloody mix of water away from his eyes and sees Coda in the middle of the clearing, snarling at a dark silhouette in front of the house. "Coda!" Jacob calls. He takes a step forward, ready to run. He watches as the silhouette moves behind the house. Coda lunges towards it, moving out of Jacob's view. Crack! A dog's yelp penetrates the night. Then all becomes quiet but the patter of rain. "Coda!" Jacob yells. He hesitates before he moves behind the house, but sees nothing. Jacob feels his chest cry out in pain and confusion, and he grabs at it, letting out another string of heavy coughs. 2 teeth marks bleed through his shirt. He moves to the front of the house and bashes his fist against the door. "Hey," he calls. "Where's my dog?" He waits a few seconds and gets no response. He peers through the windows, but there is nothing to see. He looks at the door and back at his hand. White dust from the door mixes with his blood, forming a thin layer of red around his knuckles. As the rain falls, it creates little craters in the layer, as if the drops were trying to create more holes in his body. The wind picks up, and the clouds cover the moon. Once again, Jacob stands in total darkness. The air becomes heavier and more powerful, picking up leaves and sticks and sending them to rip apart his already broken skin. The wind blasts his face with frigid air and icy rain. He falls to the ground and tries to take cover into his coat, but he can still feel his skin being sliced. With nowhere to go, he furiously bangs his fist against the wooden door. "Please," he begs. It all stops. The wind, the rain, the darkness. The clouds move away, and the moonlight shines upon the clearing, revealing Jacob to be a bloody mess. A dim light flickers in the house, and he hears the sound of a voice so rough and sharp that he can feel it scrape against his brain. "You're back." It doesn't sound human, but something about it feels familiar. "Oh!" Jacob moves closer to the windows, but sees nothing. He curls his hand into a trembling fist once more to knock. This time the door flies open. Jacob scrambles inside and neglects to shut the door. He places his hands on the floor to push himself to his knees and winces. Once up, he takes his first look around. A light sparks, then ebbs and flows from a single candle in the center of the room, causing the length of Jacob's shadow to fluctuate against the walls. Empty picture frames hang from a saturated yellow wallpaper, patterned with the same purple flowers as outside. The air, dense and warm, invades Jacob's nostrils with the smell of ash. He knows this place, but from where? Within his own mind, he hears the inhuman voice call towards him again, this time in the direction of a dark hallway in the corner of the room. "You'll never stay away." "Who are you?" Jacob calls out. "What do you—" He has another coughing fit, throwing him to the floor on all fours as he clutches his chest. It feels as if something is digging deep into him, as if it were wrapping itself around his heart. A shadow moves against the walls until it engulfs Jacob in darkness. He squints his eyes and raises his arms to protect his face against an attack. Instead, he feels something wet touch his elbow. Confused, he opens his eyes wider and sees Coda licking his arm. "Coda," Jacob says. He wheezes and reaches towards the dog, which barks once and moves into his open arms, rubbing his head against Jacob's chest. "You're okay." He smiles and rubs its head, running his fingers through its thick coat as if it were the first time he's done so. "I don't know what's going on here, but we need to go. Come on." His palms and knees scrape against the rough texture of the floor as he attempts to stand. He motions to Coda to come, but the dog doesn't obey. "Come on, old man. Let's get out of here." He looks around, paranoid that something else will come out of the darkness. "Let's go. I'm serious." Still, the dog stays put. It growls at Jacob. "Now!" Jacob stomps his foot, and suddenly, the whole house shakes. The picture frames fall off the walls, and the wallpaper begins to rip upwards. Coda's eyes turn red, and his fur sheds from his body until his spotty pink skin shows. His ears and fangs lengthen, and his entire body triples in size. The monster lunges at Jacob with his teeth bared and his claws outstretched. Jacob screams and covers his face with his arms, anticipating to meet his end by his own dog. Nothing happens. The monster is gone. He slowly opens his eyes behind his braced arms, and he sees that the house is still intact. The picture frames return to their places along the wallpaper. Maybe they never changed in the first place. "The hell is going on here?" he says. Jacob turns to the open door to leave, but it slams shut on its own. Fearing for his life, he uses all his strength on the doorknob, but can't even turn it. He throws all his weight against the door, but his physical strength succumbs to his mental weakness. He slides to his knees again, defeated. No use. That voice again. That terrible, devilish, familiar voice. Jacob covers his ears, tears flowing down his face through the crevices of his cracked skin and semi-dried blood. Not that voice. Please, oh God, not that voice. November 17th, 1989. Dole. A new light flickers from inside the dark hallway, shining upon a small and circular table. It is tall enough to reach Jacob's waist and holds a lone picture frame. Get up. Jacob winces at the sheer volume of the command. He wobbles as he lifts himself and limps down the hallway. He stands over the table and hesitates before taking the frame. His bloody hands leave red stains along the silver edge. His tired, withering eyes move in saccadic motion as he tries to process the information of the photo. A young girl on the swings, the same as from his truck. Only in this version, he looks as he does now, skin shredded and blood stained with dead eyes. He looks closer and sees that the girl is also transformed in the photo. Something in the reflection of the frame catches his eye. He tries to breathe, but doesn't feel a take in oxygen. Every part of him stiffens when he sees her. Ah, a young, pale-skinned girl stands in front of him. Her eyes bleed and her skin is flaking, just like Jacob's. He recognizes her instantly. Though it has been 10 years, she has not aged since. He can only let out a whisper. Emma. She moves towards him with inhuman speed and pushes her fingers into Jacob's chest cavity. He doesn't even react. She pulls with a great force, ripping what feels like his soul from his own body. He collapses immediately, vision fading as her footsteps move closer. A gentle calm sweeps over his body, and all goes dark. November 17th, 1989. The air kisses the skin with a soft, cool touch. Sweet Child O' Mine plays faintly from a radio as a young coda tries to catch the leaves falling around him. A swing set creaks as it rocks back and forth in front of a house surrounded by purple and pink out-of-season flowers. Push me higher, Daddy. I want to go higher, Emma says. She swings in quickly, almost catching Jacob off guard as he tries to light a cigarette in between pushes. All right, he says, but promise me you won't jump. I promise, Emma replies. She looks towards him, and her smile fades. Wait, you promised me you wouldn't smoke anymore. Oh, Jacob teases. He grins as a woman walks up to him, holding a Polaroid camera. She kisses him on the cheek. You did promise, though, the woman says, playfully winking at Jacob. She clicks the camera to print the picture. She fans it and hands it off to Jacob, who takes a quick look and slides it into the back pocket of his jeans. Thanks, babe. Thanks, babe, Emma mocks. Hey, 6-year-olds shouldn't mock their parents. Jacob scolds. He pushes her swing a bit harder now. Higher, I want to go to heaven. Jacob and Emma's mother look at each other with incredulous smiles. Yeah, okay, Emma, Jacob says. He gives her another solid push. Emma smiles again and squeals with glee as she reaches forward, trying to touch the clouds. She leans forward, and the seat of the swing gives out. Without the support, she slips and falls. Wake up. You're not Emma, Jacob sputters. She turns, giving him his first full glimpse of her under decent light. Her neck, tilted at an angle, is broken. The bone protrudes from her peeling skin, while black blood falls from her empty eyes. She moves with the same demeanor as in her past life, but with sporadic twitches. She slowly moves towards Jacob, cradling something in her hands. Her mouth moves but makes no physical sound. Even in death, you cannot escape your sin. She opens her hands, revealing a beating heart. Jacob's beating heart. The blood oozes between her fingers and onto the floor, welling at his knees. Eat the red fruit. The red fruit? Jacob wheezes. Penance. Eat the red fruit. Jacob turns his face away, but it is no use. Emma wraps her peeling hands around his mouth with inhuman speed and shoves the red fruit into his protesting mouth. He is resistant to chew at first, but his teeth have already made contact. The texture is tough and chewy, but still soft enough to break down. The juices are warm and taste like iron. He never realized iron could taste so delicious, so perfect. He begins to chew faster, harder. The taste becomes irresistible. Juices flow down his chin, the color matching that of the openings of his ripped skin and bending at every corner. He wants it. He wants to eat the red fruit. Before Jacob knows it, he finishes it. He weakly looks into Emma's eyes for the last time. His entire body goes limp, and he stops breathing. Daddy will die forever by the red fruit. Fire-colored leaves scatter on the uneven wet road. Flying and drifting through the air is a light blue 1980 Chevy Silverado weaves in and out of turns. An Aussie shepherd falls off the passenger seat. How about we listen to some music, old man? Jacob says. He opens the glove compartment, revealing a stack of old rock and roll tapes. He reaches with one hand to pick one. As he opens the case, he lets out a string of loud and painful coughs. He feels pain on his chest, and he pushes his shirt to the side to see 3 stitched, marked on his chest. But he's just old. He's got other tattoos he can't remember getting. No big deal. Falling asleep has always been a difficult job for me. The cold night awakens my soul. At least whatever is left of it. Every night, the same old dream, which slowly starts haunting and becomes my only reality. I ask myself every night, when will this end? The only answer I get is another night full of misery. These constant thoughts ramble in my head throughout the day, and with these thoughts I dim the lights, close my eyes, and let the horror consume me. Good morning, Ma. The daylight and her smile, what else do I live for? After another dreadful night, I try to wake up with all my might, brushing away the thought of the darkness. These days, the alarm clock does not really help, but Tia does. Her little voice pulling me out of a haunted place I relive every night. I breathe in. It still feels difficult to consume this fresh air, and I try to start my day. Standing in the kitchen with the morning cup of coffee, I think about the abrupt decision of coming back to this quaint little town, which was once my home, away from the busy days, like in the city. The city, where I drowned my youth just so I could escape these nightmares. I don't really remember when the nightmares really started, but all I remember is it has been a part of me. The city did provide an escape from them, at least most of the times. Some nights would pass by because of the bitter combination of tequila and rum intoxicating me to sleep, some with coffee and work to keep me awake. So far, the only thing that helped was Tia. Tia came into my life like sunshine. Who could believe a night of intoxication would change my life? Being a single mother has been difficult, but Tia has been the only medicine to the unsettling feeling in haunted nights. She almost took away all the pain I had, and all that was left was love. Coming back to my hometown with her was the best decision I had ever taken. But with this happiness also came back the dreadful nightmares. They might pack an extra sandwich with pickles. Her voice breaks me from my thoughts. I pack her tiffin and drop her at the bus stop. Coming back home all alone is not the ideal kind of day, but I have to. I go to my room and try to wash off the uneasy feeling. I soak myself in the bathtub and rest my head, trying to gather my thoughts together. I have to meet a few deadlines and I have no clue how it is all going to turn out. I need to push off the chaos and work on the articles. Cracking. I hear the door to my room creak open. I get up unsettled and wrap myself in a robe. I come out to see who it is. At this hour, the house is only to me. I search around and I see it. The shadow. The shadow that creeps in my dreams at night and haunts me. I follow it, but it disappears. My heart beats faster as I try to fathom the surrounding. Am I going crazy? I turn around and try to understand how the locked door opened. I go back to my room and change into a pair of pajamas. Throughout everything I do, I feel something lurking around me. The temperature of the room is going down, and I don't understand if this chill is because of the temperature or my fear. I try to check the thermostat. It shows the temperature to be normal. I try and call the handyman to check the thermostat, but couldn't connect. I go by the hall to the kitchen and fix myself a coffee. This is just an uneasy feeling, I tell myself, and start working. But the temperature of the room is dropping every second. The backyard has turned dark, as if the night has come early. Am I in one of my dreams? This question starts haunting me when I feel an intense pain, as if someone has bit me on the back of my leg. I see nothing. I am in excruciating pain, and I feel uneasy. This feels so real. I try calling the doctor, but the line does not connect. I try to run out of the room. It looks windy, and the atmosphere has turned out to be as if it's midnight. I check my watch, and it shows 11:03 a.m. It is still close to noon. I try to open the door when I feel my hand being pulled away from the door. I look back and I black out. Mom, you okay? I feel lightheaded as I wake to the voice of a scared Tia, sitting next to me holding my hands. I am in my room, tucked in my bed. I can't recollect what happened. All I remember is the feeling, the irksome, chilly feeling of someone around me. I try hard to remember what made me pass out, and all I can remember is the coldness of the night. It felt as if we were in the woods, and the smell of wet soil. I close my eyes and try to focus even more, and I cuddle Tia as if it is the last time I could ever do this, and I hear the familiar voice of Roy. He rushes in the room as soon as he realizes I am awake. "How are you now?" he asked. "Much better." I forced the words out of my dry throat. He looked worried, and I inquired how he turned out to be my knight in shining armor. He was my primary emergency contact, and the 911 call I placed for help actually did go through. The rest of the day went by, thinking about what happened to me today, and what should I do about it. Wah! A few days had passed by, and I met a therapist. This wasn't my first therapy session, but this one was very important. This was the first time I felt it happening to me in the middle of the day. It wasn't a dream anymore. The therapist had the same answer for this recurring phenomenon. He said these were symptoms of PTSD, but could not explain the reason for the same. I also met a priest. I don't believe in ghosts. Neither do I believe in the presence of spirits and demons. But this looked like the only option to find peace. The feeling of being trapped in my own house was unbearable. I had a lot of dark dreams where the shadow tries to lead me somewhere. But this was the first time I felt like this was more than a dream. I felt like I could be trapped forever. Trapped in a small space with barely any room for air and the overwhelming darkness. That could break one's soul. I had to try every possible way. After talking to our church's priest, I made my way to pick up Tia. When I reached the school, the teacher told me that Tia had already left. I went home and waited for her to come back. It was 8:30, and this was the first time Tia had not been home, and she did not even call to inform the reason for the same. I called a few of her friends and found out that Tia wasn't with any one of them. Panic settled in. I had to know where she is. I understood from Jeff, Tia's friend, that she sometimes hung out near the outskirts of the town by the old yard. I walked out of the house with my coat and the car keys. I was feeling restless and I had already tried her number a couple of times. I drove to the yard and searched for her all around. Surprisingly, the place was familiar. I walked past the broken little cottage and the woods started. Small little plants and creepy insects, the silver of the moon providing a little lights to walk past. I called Tia another time before switching on the flashlight of my cell phone. I walked a little more until I started feeling cold all of a sudden, and the dreadful smell of something rotten. I kept walking and trying to call Tia at the same time. At some point, I lost my cell phone reception. Thank goodness I had informed Roy before leaving. I walked past, and suddenly, I started feeling that my feet felt wet. I had my boots on, but my feet felt like they were in this mushy land. I try to get rid of the feeling, but I can't. But I walk away as I need to find Tia. I walk through the woods and all of a sudden I see Tia, her face bruised, leg bleeding and her clothes torn. I run to save her, but how much ever I try, I couldn't reach her. I howl out a cry of help with all the might I could gather. I can't stop weeping, and neither can't she. I see her eyes, the pain, the anger, and all I could think about was the shadow. The shadow was here. The shadow is behind all of this. Suddenly I feel I couldn't breathe, not because of the pain or the fear, but because I felt like someone trapped me somewhere in a small space. I could feel the air but couldn't breathe. I felt trapped, and I ached for my daughter. I was looking at her face, bruised and scratched. Felt like a rabid dog did it. I stared at her face and stared, and something different but familiar happened. I could see someone behind Tia, a shadow, the same shadow that haunted my dreams. For the first time, the shadow felt to be so close to me. I was scared for Tia and wanted to save her, but I was trapped and couldn't move. I begged to the shadow. I cried and asked Tia to move. I could see my wrist bleeding for no apparent reason, and I could feel the pain. I looked at the shadow and found a familiar face, and I lost my consciousness. The next day I found myself in the hospital with Tia by my side with no sign of bruises. I had a broken wrist and an head injury, which I could not explain. Thanks to Roy, who came to save me. The entire time in the hospital, the only thought I had was of the shadow. I knew her. I don't know how, why and when, but I knew her. The next few weeks were just sweaty and restless nights, and the fear that I may lose Tia. I tried my best to keep calm and think it was a psychotic episode, but all of it was real. I had constant bruise marks which did not go away, and the injuries of that night were not fading away anytime soon. The doctors couldn't find a medically suitable reason for these injuries. I continued therapy. I was scared, but this time it was more about Tia than I, and this time I couldn't go wrong. It was the night before the school's founder party when things got worse. I got ready to be the chaperone for the school's Founder Day ball. It felt normal after a very long time. I was wearing a beautiful dress and Tia looked so pretty. She left a few minutes before me with Jeff. I grabbed my car keys, and that's when my wrist felt like it broke completely, and I heard the shrill noise of Tia shouting. I ran to the door, but couldn't open it. I heard someone bang the door from the other side, and it made me jump. What? Was it Tia? The knocks? The constant knocks on the door felt so familiar. The unbearable noise, the storm, it felt like I'd been through this before. Deja vu, that's what I felt the actions that were going on to be like. Finally, I could see the shadow, and I looked into her eyes, and suddenly her face became more visible. Her face was so familiar, and finally I knew why this is happening to me, why it all started. It all started the summer of '93. My cousin came to our place, and since that summer nothing has been normal. It all started with the same old nagging and filthy comments that we shoot at each other. The same old, who is the best competitions. We grew up with this constant hate we had for each other. But this summer it had to be different. We were grown up and about to start our lives. That night I crossed my limits. It was a simple act of revenge. I locked her out. It was cold. My aunt was not there, and she needed to be punished for stealing the guy I liked, for stealing Roy. It was the Founders Day ball, and I did not know things would turn the way they are right now. I saw her kissing Roy, and everything turned upside down. Today had to be Roy and my day. I was so angry that I asked a few of my friends to teach her a lesson. I locked her out in the blazing cold all by herself. She knocked the door. She kept on knocking, but I just ignored it all and went upstairs to the warmth of my room. All night she knocked the door, banged it, and tried everything that one can think of. She went back to the yard where there was the after-school party, and my friend led her to the woods. It had to be a simple small prank, but the hell broke loose next day. The next morning, it all had to end, but it did not. I woke up to sirens and shouting, cries and chaos. She was dead. She was stripped down and ripped apart. We were told it was wolves that attacked her. She was bitten and scratched, her face bruised and feet soiled. It had filled my heart with pain and guilt. I felt horrible. I felt so horrible that I omitted that part of my life completely. I forgot all about it and erased the gruesome deed I had done. But since then, nothing was the same. Every night, the same dreams, the same knocking at my window, the barking of the dogs, the noise of the storm when the nights are silent. No one believes me, but I could see her shadow every day lurking in the dark. Finally, it all made sense. I hear the storm cool down and the bruised face of the shadow approaching me. I see her smiling at my misery. I want to apologize, but I am so scared that no word is coming out of my mouth. Her pale and scarred face inches closer to me and I stop breathing. I thought the end was near, but at this moment, that did not scare me. All I could think about was the past and the guilt I hid for such a long time. Maybe this is where it would all end. Only relief being the fact that Tia was safe. I could feel the bite on my leg again, but I can't move, especially when her face is inches apart from me. Slowly, I feel every bit of the pain she felt, the nails of the dogs piercing in my skin, the way her wrists broke as she fell down while running, the bruises on my face, and finally the last attempt when she tried to hide in a small passage between an old rustic broken stone cave or whatever that was. Suddenly, the land got mushy and disoriented, and the soil slid down and stopped the air. She was alive, but she could not breathe, and I felt the same. I thought this was my end. I wanted to apologize. She wasn't supposed to go so far in the woods. I closed my eyes and let the pain take over me. When Tia opened a room and my world shattered. I wanted her to run away, but she ran to me as I was on the ground. I was scared and looked around to find the shadow, but she was long gone. Since that day, the dreams have become more real, and my life has become a game where I relive that night again and again. The pain, the fear, the filth, all of it. Every night I am running through the woods and getting trapped, losing my breath and waiting for death. She was locked out one night, and I am trapped in forever. He hurried up the street, trying to catch up to the elderly lady. "Ma'am? Excuse me, but could I trouble you for directions?" She stopped walking, turning to face him. "Where to?" He took one breath of air, flattening his vest, before answering, "Rocher Manor." She turned on her heel, wagging a finger at him. "What business have you got there?" He straightened. "It was my father's property, ma'am. I'm here to sell it. Up the hill there." She pointed to a thin, cobbled path winding between the shops on the main road. Before he could thank her, She addressed him firmly. Now, don't you go snooping around here for long. This town isn't home for fellows like you. His eyes widened, eyebrows hitting his hairline. She looked him over appraisingly before adding an eerie warning. This town doesn't grow on you, son. It grows in you. Don't let it fester. Golly. Rocher Manor sat, perched right behind the hill. A chimney peeking over the grass was the first sign of any life for miles. As he turned the key in the lock, relieved father hadn't thought to change the locks once more before his death. The sun had already melted into the horizon, and the purple had edged into the sky. The mist had gathered on the moors, pooling across the grass, and he could see nothing but the occasional thistle bush or treetop. The house was just how he had left it 20 years ago, only with a thin layer of dust settling on the furniture. His summons had been delayed in the mail. The house had sat curiously empty for weeks. Turning the lock firmly behind him, he started making his way up the stairs. The wood had started to rot, and he didn't hear creaks as much as feel his feet sinking through each stair. A white linen sheet had been pulled cleanly over the mattress, which was no doubt infested with some bug or other. The sheet of dust was absent, and the window blown wide open, the wind howling its displeasure. Placing his trunk on the ottoman, he crawled under the sheets. The day of traveling had him delusional, and he wasted no time changing his clothes. The last thing he heard before drifting off, likely some machination of his mind, was a slow, rhythmic rocking. 3. The buyers were scheduled to collect their keys for Sunday, and while the house may remain empty for months, after that, it was no longer his problem. He piled all the house keys his father had collected over the years on the dinner table. He removed most of the locks his father had placed on doors and windows, although some he physically could not move. He piled those keys on the dinner table too. He collected the key to every desk and every wardrobe and added those keys to the pile. The afternoon was spent cleaning, removing furniture that was too rotten to be considered an addition to the new buyers, and dusting what remained. He knew not how his father had lived in these conditions. The old woman's warning only resurfaced when his head hit the pillow a second night when the rocking returned. He could hear it clearly now. It came from above him, from the attic. He resolved to have a look tomorrow and promptly drifted off. 40 wine. The attic seemed barren in the daylight, absent all the shadows that had scared him as a boy. Nonetheless, there sat the rocking chair. In the center of the room, empty. That night, he watched the clock, the temptation of his bed forgotten. When the largest hand hit the 9, he could make it out once more. He sneaked up the stairs, iron bar in his hands. He was his father's son after all, and arrived at the top of the stairs. In the chair that had been empty only hours ago sat a thin, translucent silhouette. A little girl. "Hello," her wispy voice said. "Have you come back for me?" He moved out of the shadows, and her face fell for a moment. She spoke once more. "I don't know you. I live here now. You're Martin's son, aren't you?" She giggled, a high, echoing laugh. "What a pity. My eyes would have suited you better." His voice came out rougher than intended. "What?" "You would have been much more handsome." He moved further out of the shadows. "Excuse me, but who are you?" "I might gift them to you anyway." She surveyed his frame, now illuminated by the light. "He would have liked that," she added to herself. Growing desperate, he added a frustrated, "Whew. Good night, pretty boy." She disappeared. If he hadn't done so already, he resolved to leave this town at the earliest instant. Vit stay. The next night, the rocking returned, and whatever foolish, naive hope he'd had that last night had been the end of it disappeared with it. He moved up the stairs once more, drawn in by a strange, morbid curiosity. If anything went wrong, he reasoned, she was just a little girl. She couldn't hurt him. Her glassy eyes surveyed him upon his entry. "I hadn't expected you so early." She spoke as if she had invited him over for tea, as if she wasn't haunting his attic. "Why are you here?" He spoke in a clear-cut tone, hoping it would have an influence. Her wispy lip curled up into a smirk. "Aren't you pleased to see me?" "What are you doing here?" He moved closer. "What even are you? You may be a pretty boy, but it seems there's nothing up here." She tapped her temple and burst into giggles. "I'm a ghost, obviously." He gave no acknowledgement of her insult. "And why are you in my house then?" She stopped laughing and her glassy eyes bored into his. "You know, Martin liked me a lot more than you do." He held her gaze. "And how do you know my dad? Why are you haunting his house? You ask too many questions. You don't answer enough." They held a battle of wills, holding fierce eye contact, waiting for the other to back down. She blinked first. "Martin was my fiancé." As she caught his eyes again, she giggled. "Really, my eyes would have suited you so much better. I really must gift them to you someday." Privately, he thought her glassy eyes deserved no place near his body. He returned to his train of questioning, settling himself on the floor. "You were married to my father." "Arranged to be married. Our parents were neighbors and thought it prudent." Martin didn't agree. She tilted her white head, adding in a dazed tone, "Although I'm sure he regrets it now." "How?" "Hush, pretty boy." She placed her hands on her hips, her baby lips in a pout. "How can I tell a story if you keep interrupting me?" He gave her a regretful smile, and she continued. "He was very much in love with a girl from the village. Some Sylvia. That's my mother's." A crease appeared between her eyebrows as she whispered, "Hush!" She collected herself, dusting off her translucent dress, and continued. "And so, he refused to marry me. His parents would never have agreed, and you know how much he wanted their money." She paused, and he nodded. "So, he decided there was nothing to it but to get rid of me. One night, he dragged me into the moors and made sure that's where I stayed." His eyes were now wide as saucers. "His old, senile father." She gave another laugh, full of merriment. "Luckily for me, I got the chance to haunt him, and I've stayed by him all these years." She looked him directly in the eye. "Don't you think he regrets it now?" He could not answer. He got up, dusted himself off, and took off down the stairs, never meeting those glassy eyes once. Vada Dori. The rocking didn't stop that night, nor the next. 8.8. By the end of the week, he had never been more overjoyed to hand off his father's hoard of keys and take the next train inland. He had not slept for a week. "Inden tighter. I knee. Ow. I towel. Bah. Always." Only years later would he dare to think back to the encounter again. Of his week spent with the little girl, dressed in a white veil, halfway between our world and theirs. It was the day his own daughter stared up at him with those same glassy eyes. She'd gifted them to him after all.